My name is Hannah Mitchell, and 6 years of my life were packed into a cardboard box before the clock struck 10 that Tuesday morning. It started with a calendar notification, just a quick pop-up as I was sipping my usual vanilla latte at my desk. Subject line: quick chat, 9 hours a.m. No context, no agenda. Just that uneasy phrase everyone dreads from their boss. I looked up and saw that it was from Evelyn Harper. That alone made my stomach tighten. Evelyn wasn't a quick chat kind of woman. She was deliberate, polished, and terrifyingly efficient. When Evelyn scheduled a meeting, it was never spontaneous, it was strategic. That's why I knew in the pit of my stomach that something was wrong. I stood up slowly, smoothed the wrinkles from my blazer, and tucked my phone into my bag. As I walked past the rows of cubicles toward her office, I caught glimpses of colleagues lifting their eyes just for a second before returning to their screens. Everyone had that sixth sense in corporate America. You know when something's off, and something was definitely off. Her office door was already open, which was unusual. "Come in, Hannah," she said without looking up. I stepped in. The air was cold, literally and figuratively. She sat behind her massive mahogany desk, a desk that had been the subject of internal jokes for months. She had it custom-built and shipped from the East Coast. It was heavy, unnecessary, and screamed status. Evelyn always liked to remind you who was in charge. On the desk in front of her was a single sheet of paper. I didn't need to get closer to know what it was. "I consider this disloyal," she said calmly. Her tone clipped and rehearsed. My heart started pounding. "Excuse me." Evelyn finally looked up. Her blue eyes narrowed, and she slid the paper across the desk with one perfectly manicured finger. "You interviewed with North Bay Solutions last Thursday. You marked it as a dental appointment on your calendar." The room started to spin slightly, but I held myself steady. "I don't," she said flatly. "Don't bother, I've already confirmed it." The call came directly from their HR. "I'm not interested in explanations." I closed my mouth. There was nothing more to say. "You can collect your belongings. Security will meet you at your desk in 10 minutes. Your building access is revoked effective immediately, and your company email has already been deactivated. Just like that. 6 years. 6 years of late nights, back-to-back client meetings, million-dollar campaigns and weekend emails. Erased." I sat silently across from her, fighting to steady my breath. The world outside her office carried on as usual, but for me it had just cracked open. 3 years in a row, I had requested a raise. Not just with feelings or vague notions of deserving more, but with data, graphs, performance metrics, client satisfaction ratings. I came prepared every single time, and every single time, Evelyn had told me the same thing. "You're doing great, Hannah, but it's just not in the budget this year." Funny how budget constraints never seemed to stop her from showing up to work in a new luxury SUV every spring. This moment, this dismissal, was humiliating, yes, but it was also illuminating. I wasn't being punished for doing something wrong. I was being punished for daring to want more than she was willing to give. I stood up slowly. My voice, when it came, was surprisingly calm. "I understand." Evelyn blinked. I think she was expecting tears or begging, maybe even an angry outburst. But I wasn't giving her any of that. I straightened my spine, extended my hand, and said evenly, "I appreciate the opportunity to have worked here. I wish you and Harbour Point the best." She stared at my hand for a second, before shaking it brief and cold. I turned and walked out of her office for the last time. The hallway seemed longer than usual, every footstep echoing in my ears. The security guard, Mike, who I'd said hello to every morning for years, trailed behind me awkwardly. When I got to my desk, my coworkers pretended not to stare, but I saw the flickers in their eyes. Shock, discomfort, pity, and something else, fear. They knew if this could happen to me, it could happen to anyone. I reached under my desk for the old cardboard box I kept for moving files. It felt surreal putting my life into that box. The family photo from my sister's wedding. The succulent Rachel gave me when I landed my first big client, the world's okayest marketer mug from last year's Secret Santa. all the small things that made my space feel like mine. Emily Davis, our receptionist, appeared beside me. I just wanted to say, "I'm so sorry." I looked up at her. Her eyes were wide and sincere. "You were always kind to me," she added quietly. "Not everyone here was, but you were." That hit me harder than Evelyn's words had. "Thank you, Emily," I said, meaning it. "That means a lot." She handed me a folded note. "In case you ever need a reference, or just someone to talk to." I slipped it into my purse. "You're a good soul." The elevator ride down felt strangely peaceful. I wasn't crying, I wasn't panicking. I was just calm. Maybe because deep down I knew this day was coming. I had just hoped I'd be the one to choose when. The spring air outside was cool and bright. Sunlight warmed my cheeks as I crossed the parking lot to my car. For a moment, I just stood there, box in hand, watching the trees sway gently in the breeze. And then my phone buzzed. It was a text from Jonathan Reed. "Can we move our final discussion to today? 2 p.m. I let out a breathless laugh. You see, Evelyn thought she had caught me red-handed, caught me before I could jump ship. What she didn't know was that the ship I was sailing toward was already lowering a golden ladder for me. I opened my car trunk, placed the box inside, and looked at the building I'd spent 6 years walking into every weekday, the place where I gave everything I had, my time, my creativity, my loyalty, and in return, I was shown the door for having the audacity to want better. But the funny thing about being pushed out, sometimes it's the only way you'll ever spread your wings. I didn't cry on the drive home. I thought I might. I even brought a tissue out of habit, just in case the shock decided to punch me in the throat once the adrenaline wore off. But instead of falling apart, I just drove. The April air was fresh and the sun was bright, and Spokane looked like any other Tuesday. But for me, everything had shifted. My phone lay silent in the passenger seat beside me. I'd already replied to Jonathan. 2 p.m. worked perfectly. Now I just needed to process the whirlwind I'd walked through that morning. When I pulled into the driveway of my small, tidy house, I sat for a minute before taking the box out of the trunk. That box felt heavier than it should have, not because of the plants and photo frames, but because of what it symbolized. 6 years of my life, my loyalty, my drive, all reduced to 15 pounds of desk clutter. I set the box on my kitchen counter and stared at it. This wasn't a sick day. This wasn't a personal day. This was unemployment. And yet, I didn't feel broken. I felt something else, something I couldn't quite name. Not relief, not excitement, but something close to clarity. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Rachel, my closest friend in the office. "Just heard." "Are you okay?" Stephen said. "Security walked you out." "What the hell?" I replied quickly. "I'm all right." It was abrupt, but I'm okay. "Let's catch up tonight." She responded with a flurry of angry emojis and a thumbs up. I smiled. Rachel had always been the one person who saw things clearly, while the rest of us danced around Evelyn's ego. Rachel just called it like it was. I sat down at the kitchen island and took a deep breath, and for the first time in months, I allowed myself to reflect. I started at Harbour Point fresh out of grad school, my master's in marketing, still smelling like printer ink. I didn't come in with connections or a glowing recommendation from someone's uncle. I came in as a nobody. I made copies, took notes, ran coffee, and I did it all without complaint because I wanted to learn. The first year was a blur of staying late and saying yes. I volunteered for projects nobody wanted. I sat in meetings just to listen. I studied client briefs like they were sacred texts. By the end of year 2, I was running mid-tier accounts on my own. By year 3, I had turned 3 nearly defunct client relationships into profitable, long-term partnerships. By year 4, I saved the North Bay account Harbour Point's crown jewel after another rep fumbled a campaign that nearly cost us the entire contract. That's when Jonathan Reed started requesting me personally. "You're the only one who understands our voice," before we even finished the sentence, he once told me. During a meeting, I didn't forget that, not because I needed the praise, but because it was rare. In a sea of performance reviews and polite smiles, someone saw my value and said it out loud. That same year, I prepared my first formal raise request. I came in with numbers, campaign growth percentages, new client revenue, average client lifespan, extension under my care. I'd built a case that any finance director would have approved. Evelyn had listened, smiled and said the line I would come to know by heart. "We'd love to reward you, but it's just not in the budget this year. That said, your contribution is noted." I swallowed it. The economy was tight. I figured next year surely would be different. The following year, I brought in 2 major clients and won a regional marketing award for a campaign I led from concept to execution. Same smile, same regretful voice. "We're investing in infrastructure right now, but next cycle, we'll revisit this." Meanwhile, Evelyn posted a photo of her new Audi convertible on Instagram with the caption, "Hard work pays off." It would have been funny if it hadn't been so bitter. Still, I stayed. I stayed because I believed that loyalty mattered. I believed that hard work would eventually speak louder than politics. I stayed because I didn't want to abandon the clients who trusted me. But something changed 6 months ago. I had negotiated a 40% increase in the North Bay account budget, something Evelyn had said was impossible during the strategy review. I had made it happen. When I walked into her office that week with another request for a raise, I felt for the first time confident, and still. The same script. "You're exceptional, Hannah. But this year we're focused on tech upgrades, maybe next quarter." That night, I opened my laptop and updated my resume for the first time in 6 years. Not out of spite, out of self-respect. I sent it to exactly 2 companies. One of them was North Bay Solutions. Within 2 days, they replied. I'd gone in for a preliminary chat last Thursday, told Evelyn I had a dental appointment. The interview was discreet, professional, exploratory. No promises were made, but I could tell Jonathan was serious. Still, I never imagined Evelyn would find out so quickly, and I never imagined she'd use it as a reason to fire me. The irony was absurd. 3 years of loyalty, and the moment I decided to quietly explore my worth elsewhere, I was labeled disloyal and escorted out like a criminal. My phone rang Rachel again. "Are you home?" she asked, skipping any pleasantries. "Yes. Want me to come over tonight?" "I need a moment to breathe." She exhaled. "This is Bull, Hannah. Everyone at the office is freaking out. Evelyn told the team you were let go for violating company loyalty. She even said, and I quote, 'This should be a reminder that Harbour Point rewards those who stay committed.' Can you believe that I closed my eyes?" "It tracks," I said quietly. "She never liked that I had influence with our clients." "Well, she should have liked that. You kept the damn company afloat." I chuckled despite myself. "I'm okay, Rachel." "Really?" She was silent for a moment. Then, "You know what I think she made the biggest mistake of her career." I didn't respond, but something in me agreed. After we hung up, I poured myself a glass of water and stared at my reflection in the kitchen window. I didn't see a victim. I saw someone who had stayed silent for too long. Someone who had believed in fairness, long after the evidence proved otherwise. Someone who had just been given a strange kind of gift, freedom, and maybe that was exactly what I needed. I've always believed that timing was everything, and somehow, the timing of it all. That Tuesday was so precise it felt orchestrated, like the universe had been watching me try to stay loyal far too long, and finally decided to nudge me forward with a gentle shove disguised as humiliation. After I hung up with Rachel, I went to my bedroom and opened my closet. I pulled out the navy suit I usually reserved for high-stakes client pitches. It was the one that made me feel calm, capable, and clear. I straightened the collar, steamed out the creases, and set it on the door. There was something about changing clothes that made everything real. I wasn't just between jobs. I wasn't on a lunch break. This was a new beginning, whether I'd planned it or not. At 1:30 p.m., I parked in front of the North Bay Solutions building. Unlike Harbour Point's beige, boxy structure that looked like it belonged in a 1990s office park, North Bay occupied the top floors of a sleek glass tower in downtown Spokane. The sun reflected off its surface like a beacon. The automatic doors opened with a soft whoosh. and I stepped into the lobby, spacious, modern, flooded with natural light. The receptionist greeted me warmly. "You must be Miss Mitchell. Mr. Reed is expecting you." I smiled. "Thank you." The elevator ride to the 30th floor was quiet and strangely calming. I checked my reflection in the mirrored panel. My hair was neat, my expression composed. When the doors slid open, Jonathan Reed was already standing in the lobby waiting for me. He extended a hand. "Hannah, thank you for coming on such short notice." I shook his hand firmly. "Thank you for the opportunity." He gestured toward a hallway. "Let's talk in my office." I followed him past open-concept workspaces filled with natural wood desks, standing stations, and collaboration pods. The air felt different here, not just because of the design, but the energy. People weren't hunched over in silence. They were talking, moving, solving. Jonathan's office was simple and elegant. No mahogany monstrosity, just clean lines, soft chairs, and a floor-to-ceiling window that offered a view of the city. He offered me coffee, which I accepted, and then we sat. "I'll get straight to it," he said. "I received a call from Evelyn Harper this morning." Of course he had. "She informed me that you would no longer be handling the North Bay account." He continued, "and that she would personally oversee it until a replacement is assigned." I said nothing. I kept my face neutral, but what she doesn't know, Jonathan went on, is that our board has been considering a transition away from Harbour Point for several months. That made me look up. "Really?" He nodded. "We've noticed a decline in service quality, delayed deliverables, shallow strategy, lack of creativity. Except, of course, in your work, you've kept the relationship thriving. Without you, frankly, we wouldn't still be with them." I sat back, slowly processing that. Jonathan leaned forward. 3 months ago, I proposed we begin scouting for in-house leadership, someone who understands our brand deeply. When you reached out, it was perfect timing. We weren't going to poach you. We respect professional boundaries. But now, given what's happened..." He opened a folder on the desk and slid it toward me. "This isn't an interview, Hannah. This is an offer." My pulse quickened. I looked down at the top sheet. Position Director of Client Strategy, salary, $168,000 per year. Start date, immediate. I blinked. It was nearly double what I'd been earning at Harbour Point, and more than I'd ever thought to ask for. "This is..." I began. "It's market rate for someone with your performance history," Jonathan said, "and frankly, long overdue." I looked up at him. "Why me?" He smiled. "Because you do the work. No one sees. You think before speaking. You solve problems before they escalate. You understand not just marketing but people, and I want that kind of thinking, leading our brand strategy." I was quiet for a long moment. "I'll need a night to review it," I said finally. "I want to be thoughtful, even if my answer is yes." Jonathan nodded. "That's exactly why we want you." As I left the building, employment letter in hand, I felt the full weight of the day settle into place. This wasn't just a win. This was justice, not the dramatic TV kind, the real kind. The kind that comes quietly when you choose professionalism over revenge. Back at home, I laid the offer on my kitchen counter right next to the cardboard box from earlier. 2 symbols of my career side by side. One was what I'd carried. The other was what I'd earned. The next morning, I woke up early, even though I didn't have to. It was strange. No alarm, no back-to-back meetings, no inbox full of urgent flags. And yet my body still rose at 6:45, trained by 6 years of routine. I stood by the window with a cup of coffee, watching the sunlight creep over my neighbor's roof. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the usual morning tightness in my chest, that low-grade anxiety of what might land on my plate at Harbour Point today. There was only stillness and possibility. By 9:00 a.m., my phone rang. The name on the screen made me pause. Margaret Collins. She was one of the board members at Harbour Point, someone I had only met in passing during quarterly reviews. Polished, reserved, and very, very high up. I answered, keeping my voice steady. "Hello, Hannah. Good morning. This is Margaret Collins." I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. Not at all. I'd like to meet with you privately, she said. Preferably today, if you're available, I raised an eyebrow. Regarding... She paused. Let's just say I'd like to better understand the situation that led to your departure. Evelyn may have acted prematurely. That was putting it mildly. I can meet at 11. I offered. Perfect, I'll see you then. When I arrived at Harbour Point, the lobby felt different, not because it had changed overnight, but because I had. I wasn't walking in as someone who needed a job. I was walking in as someone who had just been offered a better one by their largest client. Emily Davis was at the reception desk, her face lighting up when she saw me. Hannah, she whispered, are you back? I shook my head gently. Just here to speak with Margaret. She leaned in, lowering her voice. Things have been tense. Evelyn's been in closed-door meetings all morning. No one knows what's going on, I smiled. Thanks for the heads up. Margaret met me in a glass-walled conference room overlooking the city. She was impeccably dressed, calm and unreadable. Thank you for coming, she said, standing to shake my hand. Please have a seat. As I sat down, I noticed a slim folder on the table, my personnel file. No doubt I've spent the morning reviewing your records, she said. 6 years strong performance, client retention rates through the roof, and 3 formal raise requests all denied. I said nothing. She tapped a manicured finger on the folder. There's no documentation justifying your termination under company policy. I took a deep breath. The word used was disloyal. Margaret's eyebrow arched. For exploring opportunities. Yes, I had an exploratory meeting with North Bay. I didn't sign anything. I hadn't even made a decision. I was planning to give proper notice once I had something concrete. She nodded slowly. Absorbing that Evelyn has enjoyed significant autonomy over her department, she said. But what's become clear in the last 24 hours is that her decision has caused ripples. North Bay has gone quiet, and we suspect they're preparing to terminate their relationship. I didn't confirm or deny it. That wasn't my place anymore. Margaret folded her hands. Hannah, I'll be direct. The board would like to offer you reinstatement effective immediately. You'd return with the title of Senior Account Director, a 15% raise and expanded oversight authority. I let the words settle in the room. It was a good offer, better than anything Evelyn had ever been willing to entertain, but it came too late. I appreciate the gesture, I said carefully. Truly. But I've already accepted another position. Margaret didn't react, she just nodded once. North Bay. I didn't confirm, but I didn't need to. I understand, she said finally. May I ask strictly for internal learning? What we could have done differently, I thought about that for a moment. Recognize value before it's too late, I said. Loyalty has to be mutual. I showed up. I delivered. I waited. And every time I asked for what I'd earned, I was told to be patient, but patience doesn't pay rent or show respect. She inclined her head. A fair point. When I stood to leave, she offered her hand again. Regardless of where you go next, I wish you continued success. You deserve it. Thank you, Margaret. As I walked back through the office one last time, I didn't avoid eye contact. I didn't sneak past like a disgraced former employee. I walked with purpose. This time, I was leaving on my terms. Exactly 1 week after Evelyn Harper fired me, her inbox lit up with an email from North Bay Solutions. The message was brief, professional but final. After careful consideration of our long-term strategy, North Bay Solutions has decided not to renew our contract with Harbour Point Communications. We appreciate the past 6 years of partnership. Please initiate full material transfer by end of business Friday. Hannah Mitchell, our new Director of Client Strategy, will oversee the transition moving forward. I didn't write it, I didn't even weigh in on the final decision Jonathan Reed had offered me. That courtesy, asking if I wanted to be involved, I politely declined. I didn't want anyone to think this was personal, even though for Evelyn it absolutely was. The day the email went out, I was sitting in my new office, an actual office, with walls and a door and a window, overlooking the city skyline. My name was already on the frosted glass. There was a welcome basket on my desk and a new laptop ready to go. Jonathan stopped by mid-morning, casual and calm as ever. "You should know," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "We sent the transition notice this morning. Just wanted you to hear it from me." I nodded. "Thank you. You didn't ask for this," he added, "but you earned the right to lead it." That meant something. For all the chaos Evelyn had created, I still didn't want her to fail. Not really. I just wanted my value to be seen, to be respected. But when you don't give people the dignity they deserve, sometimes you lose more than just your top performer. You lose trust. And that's exactly what was unraveling back at Harbour Point. At 3:00 p.m., I got a message from Emily Davis. "It's chaos here. Evelyn's been locked in the boardroom all day. Nobody's saying anything, but everyone's whispering." A few minutes later, another text from Stephen, my old IT colleague. 3 account managers just updated their LinkedIn profiles. Evelyn looked like she'd seen a ghost. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Harbour Point had banked everything on control, on hierarchy, on the assumption that people like me would stay because we were too loyal or too afraid to leave. But people are watching. They see how you treat others, how you reward or punish loyalty, and when the tide turns, it turns fast. That evening, I received a LinkedIn request from Jessica, the quiet analyst, who used to sit 3 desks down from me. Along with it came a message. "Just wanted to say, you inspired me." I'd been thinking about leaving for a long time, but kept doubting myself. Watching you walk out with your head high, I realized I could too. That one got me. Not because I needed validation, but because I knew exactly how she felt. I'd lived in that limbo space, valued just enough to be used, but never enough to be empowered for too long. Success. I was learning wasn't about big wins or dramatic exits. Sometimes success is walking away with your integrity intact, while the person who dismissed you scrambles to explain the aftermath of their mistake. By Thursday, word had spread that Evelyn was under board review. A temporary director was appointed to handle account transitions, and North Bay's departure had triggered a wider audit of client retention across departments. None of this was my doing. I hadn't pulled any strings. I hadn't made any threats. I had simply moved on. And in doing so, I'd exposed everything. Harbour Point had tried to ignore. That weekend, I sat on my balcony with a cup of tea watching the sun dip below the city skyline. Spring was in full bloom. The trees were budding. The air smelled like fresh-cut grass, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. I'd taken a chance I'd chosen myself. And even though the road had been rocky, even though it started with a gut punch in a mahogany-lined office, it had led me somewhere stronger, somewhere real. I pulled out my phone and opened the email again, the one with the subject line, "Welcome to the team." And I smiled. 1 year later, I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window in my office on the 30th floor of the North Bay Solutions building, watching the sunrise stretch across Spokane like a golden ribbon. It was a quiet morning, just the way I liked it. The city below was waking up cars, inching through intersections, delivery trucks, parking along curbside cafes, the hum of normal life carrying on. But for me, this still didn't feel normal. Not in the dull, habitual way Harbour Point used to. This felt earned. There was a time I would have killed for a corner office. I used to think success looked like a title on a door or a bigger salary. And while I won't lie, those things felt validating. It turned out that what I really wanted was something else entirely. Respect, not the kind you demand, the kind you earn through integrity, through the way you carry yourself, even when no one's watching. I'd built my new team from scratch over the past 11 months. 5 brilliant, collaborative, supportive individuals who challenged each other without ego. We met every Monday morning over fresh bagels and brainstormed, like we were solving world peace. No posturing, no politics, just strategy and shared ownership. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever is. But it was healthy and I was happy. I'd spoken to Jonathan Reed the day before during our quarterly check-in. He told me North Bay's agency partnerships were at an all-time high, that client retention had grown 18% since I'd stepped into the role. He smiled when he said it, but it was the kind of smile that said, "We made the right call." Bringing you here. I hadn't set foot in Harbour Point's building since my final meeting with Margaret Collins, but I still heard the occasional update from former colleagues. Emily Davis, now a senior operations assistant at another firm, had sent me a holiday card with a note that said, "You were the first person who ever made me feel seen in that office. I carry that with me every day." And that was when it hit me. Maybe the real legacy we leave behind isn't in client deals or marketing campaigns. Maybe it's how we make people feel, especially the ones no one else notices. Back when I was just trying to survive the corporate grind, I didn't think much about legacy. I was just trying to get through the day without disappointing someone. But now, standing in a place where I could finally exhale, I realized I'd spent too long shrinking to fit into spaces that were never designed for people like me to grow. And maybe that's the lesson. Sometimes the spaces that don't appreciate you aren't broken, they're just too small. I got a message that afternoon from Jessica, the analyst from Harbour Point, who had quietly sent me that LinkedIn note months ago. She'd just landed a new role at a startup, and she wanted to thank me again for being an example of what calm confidence looks like. I reread that line twice. Calm confidence. That wasn't who I had always been. I had become her slowly, through heartbreak, through rejection, through quiet strength, through choosing dignity when revenge would have felt easier. That night, I poured a glass of wine, stepped out onto my balcony, and watched the skyline glow. I thought back to that morning a year ago. Evelyn Harper's frosty voice calling me disloyal, the printed email on her desk, the quiet humiliation of being walked out under fluorescent lights. She thought she'd ended something, but she'd started something. She gave me the push I needed to finally stop waiting to be recognized and start recognizing myself. And here's what I know now. When people don't see your worth, it's not always your job to convince them. Sometimes it's your job to walk away, to start again, to bet on yourself. Because the best revenge isn't taking someone down. The best revenge is rising in full view, calm, clear, and untouchably grounded. My name is Hannah Mitchell. And I didn't get even, I got free. Sometimes the greatest act of self-respect is knowing when to walk away. Loyalty means nothing if it's not mutual, and staying in a place that refuses to see your value only holds you back. When someone tries to punish you for seeking growth, they reveal more about their own fear than your worth. True success isn't revenge. It's rising on your own terms, with dignity intact. Don't wait for permission to be recognized. Know your worth. Bet on yourself and never let small minds define your future. Walking away isn't failure, it's freedom.